Hello, everybody. Welcome. If you could just introduce yourself in the messages in the chat, excuse me. Let us know where you're from, where you're connecting to us from. Santa Rosa. Nice. Merhaba from Turkey, currently in Dikili, Turkey, just north of Izmir. Palm Beach County. Nice. Indian River County. Those are our people in Ipte are around those parts. Nice. Broward County, Leon County. That's my old stomping grounds, Karen. How you doing, Karen? Duval. I hear you, Rob. Nice. Oh, yes. I'm in Turkey right now, but I love Florida. I love my Florida people. I was just there visiting friends and family in Tallahassee and Miami and Gainesville, Jacksonville. Got to visit some beautiful springs there, Gilcrest Blue Spring. If you haven't been, go check it out. I think it's the newest Florida State Park. Absolutely gorgeous spring. In Alachua County. Hillsborough County. Nice. Okay, everybody. Well, welcome. As people are joining us here, I'd just like to get musical credit to my brothers in music, the Maharaja Flamenco Trio. And if you like what you're listening to, this is actually my band called the Maharaja Flamenco Trio. If you like it, MF Trio, check us out. We were just in Florida, in Orlando, actually, performing at an incredible venue called the Timucua Arts Foundation. We can't wait to go back. Orlando was lovely. So as people are rolling in, we will get started. All right. Okay. Hello, South Bay. All right, everybody. So again, just thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here, for being present today. Either by being present here right now with us or viewing the video later that is going to be made available on the IPDE website under the ESOL webinars. I just want to support your decision and thank you for being here, for creating the time, the space in your busy day for your own professional development. Right. So your professional development benefits not only you, but everyone around you, your colleagues, your students, your community, and I think, our state, and just it reaches out. It just continues on and outwards from there. So our mindset, knowledge, skills, and abilities are some of our most valuable assets in life. And investing in ourselves always pays off. My name is Ramin Yazdanpana, and I have the honor and pleasure to lead us in our webinar today, Strategies, Activities, and Resources for Developing Adult ESOL Learners' Reading Ability. So just a heads up that the title of this webinar changed slightly. Sorry, Joseph. I know you have to change in 7 different places anytime I request a change. But I want it to be a little bit more inclusive of content. As with most these kind of presentations, ideas evolve and hopefully for the better. With that said, the ultimate purpose of developing reading ability is to develop reading fluency, and processing language through both top-down and bottom-up skills that we'll discuss today. And I hope this webinar shines additional light on how to support our adult ESOL students in this process. So although this webinar will focus on reading, discussion of writing as well as other language skills will also be discussed. With that being said, In my experience as an ESOL educator, I have found that helping students develop an understanding of why reading is so important, helping them to establish a habit of reading, as well as helping them to connect to reading content that is aligned with their reading levels, their interest and goals, to be one of the most important aspects of my role as a teacher. And it can be challenging, right? Especially with adults. So throughout this webinar, I'll be calling on you, my colleagues, my fellow adult ESOL educators, to share your perspectives, ideas, and resources so that we can leverage the wealth of knowledge from our community of teaching practice. So with that, I'm going to pause my video just so everyone can kind of focus on the content and not necessarily me, but I'll be back in the video for the Q&A at the end. Okay, so stick with me here. Okay, so let's move on. So before we jump into the content, just a few key points to know how to interact today. I'd like you to use the chat option for our interaction. You're already doing a great job of that. Hello, Chandra, and everybody else over there. So I'd like you to continue using the chat option for our interaction. Feel free to use exclamation points, emojis to express your tone and emotion. You'll only be in listen mode, so the more you can engage in the chat, the better. And I'll do my best to look over to the chat to catch any questions or comments to the best of my ability. So before I begin, I'd like to thank the positive and brilliant IPDA team, June, Tammy, and Joseph, for your support. Again, they will have this presentation in PDF format on the IPDA website, and a recording will be available within 48 hours for review and sharing. And I sincerely hope your experience of this webinar contributes positively to your professional development. Okay, so just an overview of the topics we will cover in today's webinar. And just have a look at that. And I just want to let you know that much of the content of today's webinar is sourced from this screenshot here, this not the screenshot, but the textbook that you see here. And it's sourced from Betsy Parrish's book, Teaching Adult English Language Learners. Let me know in the text if you have this book or have read this book. This is an excellent text that we also use in the professional development courses that we offer through IPDA, that is, of course, supported by the Florida Department of Education. And just to let you all know that these professional development courses are offered in the fall and the spring. We're actually in the middle of one right now. And they focus on different skills, right? Different topics of teaching adult ESOL, and maybe perhaps most importantly, building a community of teaching practice among teachers all over the state. So it's a wonderful opportunity to engage in professional development while at the same time networking, connecting with other adult ESOL educators, teachers, administrators, coordinators, and just continuing to add to your professional skill set, your professional identity, and connecting with other opportunities, right? Whether they be professional development opportunities, such as presenting at TESOL. There'll be Sunshine State TESOL coming up next year, as well as TESOL International in Tampa. So all kinds of opportunities. I encourage you to reach out to June Rawl there, the IPDA director, and you can contact June about future offerings of the professional development courses that are offered. Okay, so a bit of rationale here. I think we all know that literacy levels are closely linked to the ability to attain gainful employment. It also connects with participation in ongoing learning and improving health outcomes. In a print-dense society, literacy also enables adults to gain access to information and opportunities, and not just a dense society, but virtual and online information dense society, and even more and more so. So accessing and understanding how to access and navigate that information and connect to those opportunities is becoming more and more critical. It also enables us to develop the ability to understand more complex texts, right? So this is also linked to greater success in college and careers. Additionally, increased literacy levels also build the confidence and ability to support family literacy, which then leads to greater gains for generations to come. So focusing on literacy, and of course in this webinar we'll focus on the reading aspect of that, but focusing on all forms of literacy is extremely important, not only for the adult ESOL student, but for their families, for the community, and again, for, I think, the state and the nation. So literacy, of course, is defined as the ability to read and write. However, literacy entails far more than a set of discrete skills and strategies to develop and hone. It's important to remember that literacy is socially constructed, and dimensions of personal background, power, and identity are all at play in the process of deriving meaning from print. This means that knowledge of the learner and the sociocultural context in which the literacy is practiced is just as crucial to successful literacy instruction as is knowledge of tools and techniques grounded in empirical research about best practices. So that's not to say that research and best practices are not important, but it is emphasizing the point that we need to know our learners. We need to know who they are, what their backgrounds are, what their cultural backgrounds are, what their academic backgrounds are, and what strengths they're bringing to the classroom, and just as importantly, what their goals are, and making sure that literacy instruction is aligned with all of that. So next we have here an interactive view of reading. So reading is interactive in nature and open to various interpretations. A text does not just transmit information as shown in this figure here from text to reader. It involves information going from the text to the reader and back, and it may be used collaboratively with others. And more that is the case, right? Especially with WhatsApp, instant messaging, email, shared documents, projects. More and more so, reading is a collaborative endeavor. So a text means something different to each of us because of what we bring to it. The ways we read a text depend on prior knowledge, our needs, expectations, and the context in which we are reading, as well as our own interpretations, experiences, and culture. So we can see that this model of interactive reading that Parrish presents here is something that we can kind of keep in mind when we are selecting texts, right? When we are engaging with our learners about a text, and when we are, perhaps even thinking about how to connect learners to text that might align with their cultures, right? Or cultures that they're seeking to learn about. Some kind of context that they may be familiar with, or a context that they want to become familiar with. Asking about interpretations, right? Not assuming that their interpretation is the same as our interpretation. So all of these are important to kind of frame a text around and engage with learners in this kind of interactive way. So as teachers, we also need to have a view of literacy that encompasses multiple purposes for reading and for writing, as well as any other skill that we're teaching. There are reasons other than survival and work that motivate adult English language learners to attain literacy in English or in their first language. For example, parents want to understand and help their family members with schoolwork, as well as correspond with school administrators, teachers, and engage with the community at large. Literacy is also a vehicle for recording and passing on culture and traditions from one generation to the next. So in all these ways, if we can empower our students to become stronger readers, to be more literate readers, more kind of literate learners, then they're able to be empowered to support not only themselves, but those around them as well. Hello, I'm just reading here. Good evening. Yes, Soliman, welcome. So with this task analysis, we can see the ways in which literacy is situated in everyday tasks. Here we see daily tasks. As adult ESOL educators, we need to look beyond reading and writing as a skill set taught only in the classroom to the actual contextualized uses of the varied forms of literacy used in learners' lives. So let's take a look at this, this chart here. So we have daily tasks such as preparing meals, and then the literacy activities that are associated with this daily task, such as reading packaging, measurement, numeracy. A daily task of food shopping can be making lists, reading labels and pricing, searching for online coupons, reading signs in the store. Getting to work involves, or could involve, reading a bus schedule, street signs, using a phone app, all kinds of things just to kind of get to work. So I think you get the idea of how daily tasks and the literacy activities that are embedded in these daily tasks. We can also think of reading tasks as everyday or, everyday and more kind of extended reading tasks. So here we have some everyday reading tasks, such as reading menus, text messages, billboards, online forums, and we have more extended reading tasks, such as reading novels and articles. And I want to take a break from talking here and ask you to contribute in the chat. So what are some additional everyday reading tasks your students engage in? If you can write that in the chat. What are additional everyday reading tasks your students engage in? Street signs, absolutely. Directions, information from the child's school. I really like that one, Christine. And Christine, are you able to, are your students able to bring that content into the classroom? Yeah, medicine labels, recipes, job listings, kind of easy English news. Yes, thanks, Christine. I saw that. Good. Yeah. So as we see here, they're already engaging in these everyday reading tasks, and it could be interesting if you're not doing this already, or if you are doing it, to maybe do more of it, to ask students to bring in some of that reading, right, or take a picture of that reading, bring it to class for discussion, to share, and even to teach, right, other students what they're learning outside of the class. But this also helps us to better understand our students' environments and the reading challenges that they're having. And then next, what are extended reading tasks that your students engage in? So extended reading tasks are, some are novels, some are articles. What are some other extended reading tasks that you think your students are engaging with? Thank you, Suzanne. Schedules, call outs in the prison system. You figure that that's very important to understand clearly. Yeah, homework from my class. Absolutely, Christine. So, okay, good. Financial notices. Oh my goodness. Yeah, family correspondence, reading comics. Oh, I love comics. I love graphic novels. Absolutely. Reading job post descriptions, employment memos. Yes. So, as we know with these extended reading tasks, they can be difficult to tackle, especially because they're from the real world. And so there can be a lot of content there. So, thinking about ways that we can kind of help students break down those more extensive reading tasks can be challenging. It can take a lot of time, but we can build up to that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a moment. Thank you all for your participation, your contributions here. A lot of great stuff, banking information. Yeah, their kids' own assignments. Court documents. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about types of reading. So all of that, what you all have contributed in the chat, can be categorized under these types of reading or types of literacy. So in competency-based literacy instruction in the 1980s and 90s, 4 types of reading were identified as critical for success for newcomers in English language programs. And these still characterize literacy needs of adults learning English. So the first we'll start with is survival literacy. So survival literacy revolves around learners' immediate day-to-day needs, which you all highlighted several. So such as recognizing prices, forms of identification, banking information, these different kind of memos, schedules. Then we have document literacy, and this is the need to decipher charts and tables, labels, bills, and advertisements. The next is quantitative literacy. And quantitative literacy is needed to use and understand text with numeric information. So pay slips, schedules, tax forms. Thank you, Audrey. And next, we have prose literacy. So this represents an ability to understand more extensive text, such as manuals, rental agreements, textbooks, articles, novels, court documents. Okay, Elena, thank you for that. And then to add to this list, of course, we have digital literacy. So this represents using current technologies, which are ever evolving, to evaluate, organize, communicate, solve problems, and create information in our ever more technology-rich world. The next is visual or graphic literacy. And this represents the ability to process and represent knowledge through images. Coincidentally, visual literacy will often represent a literacy strength for learners who don't have print literacy in one of their first or home languages. And finally, financial literacy. So more than just understanding and using text with numerical information, learners also need to navigate financial systems, learn about online phishing, identity theft, and acquire skills for meeting their financial needs and goals. So these types of literacy can be a good kind of framework for you to categorize, right? And kind of understand, maybe even to develop a needs analysis to see what kinds of literacy your learners are engaging with, on a kind of everyday or common basis, and then be able to help them, right? To support them in being able to understand, to interpret, and to then be able to know how to address the needs of those documents. So again, taking a break here, letting you contribute. I wanted to ask, what types of literacy do you focus on in your program or classes? And there's the list there of the types of reading, the types of literacy. If you could, if it's easier for you, you can just put the number in there. But I'm just kind of curious, what types of literacy do you focus on in your current classes? A mixture of all. That's fantastic. That's fabulous, Angela. Yeah, 3 and 4, quantitative and prose, document literacy, survival. Great. Okay, great. The next question here. Thank you, Rob. You actually read my mind. So, what types of literacy might you want to focus more on in your program or classes? I love how we're on the same frequency here. So, what types of literacy might you want to focus more on in your program or classes? Just kind of reflecting on that. Thank you. I don't know if it's Megan or Megan, but thank you. Yes, digital literacy, visual graphic literacy. Yes. Okay, great. Thank you, Karen. So Lehman, document literacy. Yeah, Patricia. Okay, fantastic. Thank you all so much for contributing that. Okay, moving on here. So Let's talk a little bit about emergent readers. And, because it's also important to recognize that some of our adult ESOL students are emergent readers. So emergent readers are those without literacy in their first language, or who have limited or interrupted prior formal schooling. So the following are descriptions of the different kinds of emergent readers. The first are pre-literate students. So pre-literate students are speak a language that does not have a written form, or a form that has not been or a form that has been developed recently. Non-literate students cannot read or write in first, second, or standard language of origin of country. So those are non-literate. So there is a written form, they just don't know how to read or write in it. Low literate students have some formal schooling, but reading level is below average primary school level. And low educated students have at most 10 years of education in their origin country. For immigrant, typically at most primary schooling. So again, I wanted to ask you in the chat, do any of these descriptions describe readers in your program? If so, please write what kinds of emergent readers are in your program. I'm super curious, and I have to say in my, thank you, Elena, low educated, I have none and low. Okay, non and low, got you. Low literate. Thank you, everybody. Yes, so we all have, it looks like we have some emergent readers, and so that's good to know, because we're going to talk about now just some ideas of working with emergent readers. So one is, and again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and I think that's a good thing, right? Because we need to hear ideas that, maybe some reinforcement of things that we're already doing, and hopefully some new ideas here. So one is teach within a context, right? So we can do this by conducting needs analyses, really through weekly activities to find out about learners' families, homes, hobbies, interests, prior work experiences, and also try to teach language around a central theme. So this all can kind of focus the language in a way that learners can attach and connect the language that they're learning to a central theme. So teaching within a context. Draw on students' funds of knowledge, creating lessons that draw on students' funds of knowledge that leverage their prior knowledge and skills. So a great thing about teaching adults is that they have a wealth of funds, right? Of knowledge, of experience, of abilities, of perspectives, of culture, of language, all kinds of things that we can draw on to leverage their prior knowledge into the new knowledge and skills that they are building. In order to do this, we have to conduct needs analyses, that can be formal or informal, on a weekly basis, right? As we do this, as we get to know our students, trust builds, openness builds, confidence builds, and students share more and more. And I say that in order to kind of do this most effectively, we have to reflect as educators on what our funds of knowledge are, on who we are, and share that with our students, right? As a model of how to do that. And even calling on community members, bringing them into class, whether that be virtually or in class, brick and mortar, and having them kind of share their funds of knowledge. Also teach to a variety of student strengths by using graphics, pictures, realia, music, chants. Those are all kind of different ways to kind of draw and teach to student strengths, right? Multiple intelligences, different learning styles. Connect oral and written language by focusing on oral language before moving to print, and ensuring comprehension before they read it. So really drawing on the strength that students have of their oral language, of their oral ability, and focusing on that, and then connecting that clearly to the print. Integrating alphabetic and numerical literacy by practicing tracing shapes of letters, numbers, utilizing flashcards, and responding to questions that require basic addition and subtraction. Allowing students to engage in L1 clarifications if available, right, among themselves. So I realize that this isn't always available to students, but if it is, allowing for that to happen. And if it's not, allowing them to use technology where they can draw on those kind of clarifications. I'm a language learner here. I'm in Turkey. Turkish is not my first language. It's not my second language. It's a new language that I'm learning, and I'm constantly drawing on L1 clarifications as well as utilizing technology, right, to help me understand things. So build in breaks, right? Build in frequent breaks for students to relax. And I think importantly for students to laugh. Laughter is such great medicine to just relax and to reset and just to laugh at the seriousness often that comes with, you know, trying to memorize or remember or practice and pronounce things correctly, to read and interpret. Whew, that's intense, right? That's intensive kind of work. So allowing breaks, hydration, snacks, all these things. This is a workout, right? And so you know, preparing for that is really appreciated, I know, by students and teachers alike. And build in frequent opportunities for repetition and recycling. All right, seeing, saying, and reading new sounds and words multiple times and in multiple ways. So just a few kind of activities and approaches when working with not only emergent readers, but in particular with emergent readers. Okay, so let's now take a moment to briefly discuss approaches to working with emergent as well as more developed readers. So in order to save time, I'm going to discuss the first approach, language experience approach, or LEA, and then the last approach, as it really encompasses aspects of all four approaches. We'll discuss resources that can be used to teach all of the following approaches as well at the end of the presentation. So I have a nice resource list that was not only developed by myself, but by colleagues all around the state of Florida. And I'm going to share it with you at the end of the presentation. So the first we have here is the language experience approach, LEA. So this is an approach that is highly useful for adult emergent readers and writers. So texts used in this approach are student generated. LEA is based on the assumption that if the words we generate describe our experiences, we are far more likely to be able to read and understand them. That makes sense. Far too often, as I'm sure you all know, the reading texts found in even beginning level ESL materials are beyond the level of the learner audience. And often the content is disconnected from our students' life experiences and maybe outside their frame of reference. So some activities that apply a language experience approach are the following. Give the story a title. Copy the story for writing practice, right? Handwritten or typed and printed on the spot to take home. Illustrate the story or match lines from the story with a visual representation. Cut words and sentences up and have students reorder them. Cut the sentences up and you can have students, you know, engage in that activity where they cut the words, a paragraph up into word strips and then present them to others to reorder. Generate a comprehension questions, right, to ask a partner. So this is especially important as we're preparing students for proficiency tests like the CASAs, right? So being able to provide familiarity with these comprehension questions is such an important test-taking strategy. So asking them to generate comprehension questions that are similar to tests like the CASAs. It's a great way to build literacy, build reading skills, and build test-taking skills as well. Make a cloze test, right? Maybe leave out all the verbs or every fifth word, for example, which learners then fill in. and collect stories and create a class text for other groups at school to use as their reading texts. So I like to thank my one of my colleagues and who's actually in the professional development course that I just mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. Thank you, Shanice Watson, for providing this image that you see here, New Beginnings. I think she sourced this from the Florida Literacy Coalition Conference. And this is a publication titled New Beginnings. And I have the link for you at the end here, but New Beginnings is, yeah, thanks, Rob, is a collection of essays by Florida's adult learners. So what Shanice has told me is that her tutors have been using this with this New Beginnings publication with their adult ESOL readers, and they absolutely love them. And another resource here that I really like, and I'm going to put this in the chat. Actually, I'm going to put both of them in the chat. Is ESL Story Bank. And so ESL Story Bank uses this LEA approach. What's nice about the ESL Story Bank is that it categorizes it under the different proficiency, ESL proficiency levels of each story. But again, it's the same idea. Stories are created by adult ESOL learners themselves. So it creates a great model for them to use, to a great reading source for them to be able to understand, and then a model for them to be able to say, hey, I can write an essay in a similar way. All right, Marissa, well don't worry, we'll have this recorded for you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for letting us know. Okay, moving on. So the next approach is this whole part whole approach. So this approach encompasses these whole language principles that apply these top-down strategies and activities that we saw in the language experience approach, as well as acknowledging the need for developing phonological decoding and phonemic awareness. Or with some adult learners, just the ability to hold a pencil or write the alphabet. So the approach begins with a whole text that learners understand, applying these top-down approaches, and then moves on to phonics instruction, right? So phonics instruction based on words from the text. Then returning to the text to reinforce vocabulary and language skills, as well as extend the text in ways that are relevant to our adult ESOL learners' lives, needs, and goals. So this is a great approach. I would think that most of you are using this, but I think this more balanced approach is a fantastic approach because, again, it works on both top-down skills as well as bottom-up skills, and provides opportunities for repetition and recycling of the content. Okay, let me actually see here. Actually, I think I skipped a. Okay, so we're about to the end here. I definitely want to leave some time for some Q&A. So some reading strategies. So I'm not going to read these verbatim. You all can see them here, and they should be familiar. Reading strategies are, of course, important for all level of learners, but even more so as readers advance and move on to more academic, professional, and extensive reading texts. Many of these strategies should already be familiar to you, but it's also important, in my opinion, that we remember that the CASA's basic skills content standards implement these reading strategies for the various ESL levels. And I just want to share with you really quickly a visual of this. So if you go to this website here, and I'll put it in the chat, it's also available in the resources, and then you download the reading content standards. I really like this document here because it outlines the different categories, right? Being beginning literacy, phonics, vocabulary, general reading comprehension, text and format, reference materials, reading strategies, reading and thinking skills, academic-oriented skills, literacy analysis. It has this key here for the NRS educational functioning levels. And then you can see here the different content standards for each of these different ESL levels. So I think that this kind of document is really helpful as we were trying to connect our instruction to preparing students for the CASAs, right? This is a test that they have to take. And I think it's, really important that we can integrate these skills and strategies into our instruction through some of these activities that we discussed before. But having a clear kind of understanding of these here, I'll just scroll down here to, for example, reading strategies, right? Predict the content, scan simple text, skim simple text, right? So being able to kind of understand where these reading strategies are used, this can also is important to communicate with our students and saying, look, what we're doing in class is preparing you for life, to meet your goals. It's also preparing you to demonstrate measurable skill gains, which is going to move them forward. And it's also good for your programs, right? For funding reasons and just to demonstrate that gains are being made. Okay, just wanted to kind of go over that with you all. Let me get back to our presentation. Okay. Finally, here we get to one of my favorite activities, and this is extensive reading tasks. So providing time for extensive reading class and promoting practice for extensive reading outside of class, for example, the reading logs, have shown to increase adult learner interest, motivation, and confidence in reading. Texts used for this purpose need to be highly accessible. So when we're talking about extensive reading, we're talking about texts that learners can understand 95 to 98% of words on a page. And in addition, they're topics that are of interest to learners. All right. So I know that's not the easiest thing to do, okay, especially for adult learners, but it's something that we have to try. And I'm seeing Rob says, now we know who added the book club items to the modules. So yes, very, very important to develop a book club in your school, right? And not only to start one, but to continually add to it with books that align with students' needs and interests and levels. So, you can create, that's creating a leveled reading library, right? In addition, provide class time for sustained silent reading. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in the next slide. Assign reading logs and journals. So that's helping students to understand how they can build language outside of class with readings that either they have or that you have, kind of assigned them to. But then those are things, an assignment, a structure that they can do outside of class, and then allowing some time in class for them to share that, to share the vocabulary, to share what they've learned, and building a habit of reading. And then finally, focus on reading speed and fluency. And one technique that if you're not doing it already, that I suggest is being able to find audio that matches a text. So oftentimes these kind of graded readers will have this, an audio version. But oftentimes maybe you can, if you have an article, for example, or a short reading, it's something that you can produce. So you can use your phone, record yourself, right? Make an audio file, and then you can bring that into QuickTime or Windows Media, and you can actually speed up that audio or slow it down. So you can start at a certain speed and for reading one, and then the subsequent readings you can speed up, right? The audio. And what this is doing is this is actually pushing students to read faster. And this is so key to reading fluency, because if students are just reading word for word, it's very difficult for them to understand what they're reading because they're not connecting ideas and words into sentences in a fast enough pace. So they have to be pushed to read in chunks, but also to read more quickly. Okay. So a really good practice that you can do, think about it as like a sprint kind of workout or something like that. But again, it should be at their level, 95 to 98%. This is something that you could give as an assignment outside of class or within a language lab or something like that. And I'm just reading Rob likes to model it myself in class. It always allows them to see how it's done, and that even someone who has been speaking English his life can still mispronounce words. I think I did that 20 times already in this webinar. Thank you, Gwen. One source for oral and silent reading of fiction and nonfiction is readworks.org. Thank you, Gwen. Any other resources that you all have, feel free to add those to the chat. This is something that I think is a really powerful, really powerful lecture that Professor Stephen Krashen presents. And we obviously don't have time to listen to it all here, but this lecture really gives clear research and evidence-based research of the power of free voluntary reading. So as Professor Krashen describes it in this lecture, free voluntary reading should be about 10 minutes a day. It's reading with no text, right? The reading should be of interest to the reader, as that's the best motivation to read that there is. And that one positive reading experience can get students, into building a reading habit. Again, the reading is level appropriate, right? Understanding at least 95 to 98% of the text. That gets to Krashen's I+1 theory. And the research, one of the research studies that Professor Krashen presents in this video is that programs with sustained silent reading versus skill-based instruction fared equal or better on reading comprehension and standardized tests. All right. So just having students read silently for 10 minutes a day, students either did just as well or better, okay, than on reading comprehension and standardized tests. So what we need to do as educators, as teachers, as coordinators of programs, we need to make sure there's access to books for students to read in class, books for students to borrow and take home, maybe to purchase for very cheap, to trade with each other, to access online. We've already seen some of that here in this text, or excuse me, in this chat. And I think really to facilitate a relationship between the students and the library and librarians. So oftentimes our students might feel intimidated, right, to engage with librarians. But librarians are the experts, and they can really help learners find books that are level appropriate and that are of interest, and create a safe space for our learners to bring their families and create a habit and culture and love of reading. Oh, and one last thing for us who are getting up there in age, it's also really good for brain health, for reading, that is. Reading, language learning, and coffee have been shown to be the three best things for preventing dementia. So 3 of my favorite things in life. Okay, so all of these are active links. Okay, some of these I've gone over. If you could go through some of those links that Gwen provided, you can copy and paste that. I'll have the chat here, but go ahead and copy and paste that so we don't lose it. At readworks.org. And then Rob and Megan also provided. Megan says, with sustained silent reading, I have used called MIRP, monitored independent reading. You read 2 to 3 minutes with each student as time allows. You provide in the moment feedback on fluency and comprehension. So that sounds like a great way to kind of model and get them started on silent reading. Thank you for that. Okay, and some professional development resources here as well. There's a link to that video, as well as some other great links here that you can access information. So much out there. I say just dedicate, an hour to looking through these links and you'll be blown away about how much um, is provided there. Rob just posted another link there. Thank you, Rob. Um, okay, and finally, any questions that you all may have, and maybe collectively we can answer them. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And if you don't, that's okay too. Just to let you know, you can always connect with me. Here's my LinkedIn. If you have a question going forward, or if you just like to connect and network, and please do. I really here. I'm getting some Q&A here. Here we go. Sorry, I missed the Q&A before, but I see it now. So I have one question here: Is are LEA activities primarily for learning to read in one's native language? No, not necessarily. The resources that I provided you were actually for adult ESOL learners. So LEA is an excellent one for reading in an additional language as well. And then resources are key to success. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and then Megan says, where's a good resource to get beginner level books for adults? Some of those resources that I shared with you here in this, oops, sorry, I'm going through let me see here. Let me go back. If you look at, look through these, okay? This has a lot of good beginner level like content. This ESL Story Bank, I really recommend that one, Megan. I'm sorry, Megan, if I'm Megan or Megan, I'm sorry for mispronouncing. But anyway, ESL Story Bank is great. News Marshall level reading program. And then if you have the budget, or maybe you can make a proposal, right, for buying graded readers. I really like Oxford graded readers. I've used Penguin as well. So really, you should look through the different publishing houses and seeing where what books and what series kind of match your students' interests and their needs. So again, just look at the big publishing houses, look for graded readers, leveled readers, do a Google search. And I didn't provide these here, but you'll find, again, Oxford, I really like their stuff. And they have everything from graphic novels to kind of more leveled readers. Okay, and then healthcare reading curriculum. This is another resource that's great for kind of ESP, right? Those who are very specific to the healthcare. So I would say just look through these resources and source as appropriate. You all are the experts. You know your students better than anybody. Okay, so if you would please give IPDAY your feedback. And my friend Joseph has launched a poll. If you could, thank you, Rob. I really appreciate you. Thanks for posting that link. If you could take this poll, give your feedback. And as you're doing that, I just want to let you all know that the next webinar, the next IPDAY webinar, will be a Tech Tuesday. And this will be, the topic is Introduction to Airtable. And so feel free to register on the IPDAY website. And again, please connect. Please connect with me, right? Let me let me go back here to my LinkedIn. I'm asking this for for not only sharing knowledge with you, but for me to learn from you all and for us to network. I'm a big reason why of IPDAY's mission and why I love collaborating with IPDAY is because we're building a community of practice. And I know that this is what kind of, stimulates us. This is what recharges our batteries. This is what kind of makes us realize the different resources that are out there. And we don't have to do this alone. It's so much easier when we're doing it together. So thank you all so much for being here, and until next time.